And now, for the opening keynote address, it's our pleasure to have a man here who is so truly the face of Kerala's architecture. And if there's one person who's best suited to kickstart such an architecture summit being hosted in Kerala, that man is here to deliver the opening keynote address. I don't think he's a person who needs any introduction at all, so let me not get into that. Presenting to you Padmasree awardee and our pride, architect G. Shankar. Welcome, sir.
Eminent galaxy of august personalities in front of me. Thank you very much for the opportunity given to me. Government of Kerala and Asset Foundation for organizing this momentous festival. I was a part and parcel of the first edition of this festival, and I saw the response of Cochin crowd to this festival, and I'm really amazed at the turnout at 10 o'clock in the morning. Yesterday I had reports that more than 5,000 people were here looking at the design prospects, the emerging Kerala in terms of design inputs, innovation, and the rest of it. I'm so glad, I'm so grateful for the opportunity given by Government of Kerala. And our aim is actually to make Kerala as a creative, innovative design hub. Having said that, why should we talk about innovations? Today is the day for architecture, and why we should have innovation in architecture. As you know, the world over, we are facing challenges. I don't normally use the word problems. I use the word only challenges that are gripping the world over. We are going through severe crises in one way. Urbanization on one side, the pace and intensity of urbanization weighing on us, the impact of climate change, and as architects and builders, are we not responsible for the basic climate change that is happening? Kerala is still reeling under disaster impacts. And what is the way out? Can we just look at it? See, we have an agenda before us. One agenda is talk about habitat. We are talking about adequacy of housing. On the other hand, we are talking about sustainable human settlement. That's an international agenda before us. But we have another agenda, is more critical for a third world country like India. We have the brown agenda. We have three components. We have poverty on one side, we have environment on the second side, and we all want development. So how can we synchronize? How can we synergize these seemingly diverse phenomenon? Poverty on one side, environment on the second side, and development on the side. Are they actually contradictory to each other? This is a question that we need to explore and answer. Is poverty, I'm asking a very basic question to you, is poverty a negative phenomenon? I will say with such conviction that poverty is not a negative phenomenon. Probably poverty can propel people forward. Can it be a positive, this thing? Is it not poverty, the slum dwellers as we call them, are they not the people who make up this world? So can we synergize the positive impacts of poverty and look into the new developmental paradigm? Is the critical question that's before us. So let us not for a moment talk about the negative impacts. You should also understand, before I open this subject, innovation, you should also understand that the negative impact of urbanization is happening in third world countries like India. As you know, urbanization is a very positive phenomenon in one way. It gives you opportunities. Cities do attract people because of opportunity, the economic opportunity, the livelihood opportunity, and the rest of it. If you want your child to be better educated, city offers a lot of chances, a lot of opportunities for you. If you want to have better healthcare, it's the cities that offer better healthcare. That is why probably people continue to migrate to cities. By 2050, if I'm around, I'm sure that the world will be completely, almost fully urbanized. We cannot wish away that phenomenon. But on the other hand, let's also look at the world situation where urbanization is having a bad, terrible, negative impact on third world countries. Urbanization is happening to the degree of 90% plus in sub-Saharan poor countries of Africa like Eritrea, Somalia, Ethiopia, etc., etc. South America, I mean, some of the names that appear only once in 4 years when the World Cup matches are on, Paraguay, Uruguay, place like that, the urbanization has gone to the percent of 95%. Poor infrastructure, huge pressure on the economy, and how are you going to internalize the domain of urbanization is a critical this thing. I don't want to put a negative this thing, but how do we actually overcome this situation? How do we trivialize the negative impact of urbanization, all the challenges that we are facing? The only way, let me tell you, is through innovation. Kerala, let me tell you that, with such pride and pleasure, let me tell you that Kerala has got a huge legacy of innovation, especially in architecture. Let me tell you that, with such pride and pleasure, let me tell you that Kerala has actually has given directions to the whole world in terms of inputs in innovative architecture. People from all over the world. I'm a traveler, I represent a lot of international bodies, and let me tell you that Kerala is actually being touted as a huge destination in terms of architecture. You know, the kind of laurels, the credibility that Laurie Baker has brought to this small state of Kerala. You know, internationally, he is known as the father of, I would call that as innovative architecture. People call them as a low-cost architect. But one person who gave credibility, who gave Kerala architect an international stage. Let me tell you that, international stage. And Kerala has been the pioneers of cost-effective, innovative architecture the world over. And I had been to Hassan Fathi's place in Egypt, where, you know, he is being touted as the father of, you know, poor man's architecture. But the kind of architecture that we have in our own little place, Kerala, is, I mean, it's much more elaborate, much more spectacular. Let me use those words very carefully. Spectacular. The kind of range, the spectrum is really amazing in Kerala. Really amazing in Kerala. Kerala has actually shown the world to the world. Kerala has shown the world to the world. I'm making a loud statement, but I say it with such passion and compassion that Kerala has shown the world. And that is, this is the way you do it? How do you do it? How do I do it? I mean, I want to go to the next slide. Norman Foster, you know, our iconic architect, he's the person, no, not this. He's the person who talked about 3 periods in architecture. I mean, he was actually dwelling on 3 things, on the past and on the present and the future directions. Past is something where, I mean, I was listening to Sunil with such attention, and he was talking about traditional legacy of architecture. Let me tell you that also. Where else in the world, I'm making a loud statement again, where else in the world we have such a legacy of vernacular, residential architecture purely based on mathematical sciences? Where else in the world? I make a statement. You can rip me open for making such a loud statement. But let me tell you, the residential vernacular architecture of Kerala is one of the most profound styles of architecture, I mean, compared to other styles of architecture. It's based on mathematics, it's based on sciences, it's based on lots of these things. There is a belief part of it. I am not taking care of that. I dismiss it. But leave the belief part of it. But the scientific part of it is something that we should be listening. Let me also tell you, why this is being touted as a design model is because of a few reasons. One, look at the concept of Vastu Purusha in our this thing. It's a living organism to us. For architects, Vastu Purusha is a living organism. That is where the life comes in, the soul comes in. Where else in the world we have soulful expressions of architecture? Can we see houses as a living entity? If we can believe that houses have souls, if we can really internalize the fact that, you know, it can be a living organism, it can be, you know, the houses can have a soul, then we will build it responsibly. We'll build it morally right. Let me tell you that. We'll build it morally right. We'll build it morally right. We'll be very responsible in our approaches. So this is a concept which is the speciality of Kerala's vernacular legacy, traditional legacy. Having said that, look at the concepts of, I mean, architecture per se, we are talking only about buildings. Olden days, design paradigm didn't actually limit itself to the building design. It talked about Bhumi first. It talked about the land issues first. When you have to orient a building, when you have to look at the sun, you have to look at the wind direction, you have to look at the profile of the land. And you have to look at the drainage systems. That is how old times we used to even select lands for residential construction. This was the concern. Bhumi. Harnya is obviously the building part of it. Yana and China are very interesting. It talked about the vehicle design. Can you believe it? Few centuries back, the design paradigm include Yana design. Yana is Yanam in Malayalam. And it talked about even designs of the boats. That's why we got beautiful designs of the Chundan Vallam and things like that. Beautiful design, very ergonomically designed. Anthropological, this thing is there. Ergonomically designed. Designs of Chundan Vallam and things like that. China is furniture. So the design paradigm actually included everything. Land, it actually went beyond the concept of a house. This is what we are trying to promote at this age. We are always trying to, when we talk about innovation, we are talking about sustainable interventions in the world. And when I talked about soulful architecture, isn't it? I talked about soulful architecture. What does soulful architecture mean to you? Bhagyodayam is actually functional utility of the building. That's what every architect is looking for. Every designer is looking for. Initially, we are looking for the functional utility of the building. Function minus, when you talk about the efficiency parameters, factors, we actually take the circulation part out and then the functional part comes in. Functional part probably should be around 75 to 80%, circulation should be 20%. That's how we design building. This Bhagyodayam is actually talking about functional utility. What is this Sukhadarsham? Music, good for ears. Architecture should be a feast for eyes. Sukhadarsham. It should be good looking. When you showcase anything innovative, why should you look at it? When you look at all the big art, I don't want to name them, iconic architecture across the world, you look at it because it makes you look at it. It makes you look at it. When you look at it, you feel good about it. That is why you look at it. That is the speciality of Kerala architecture too. Modern architecture, contemporary architecture, you name it, rebrand them. But that is the Mughashri, as I call it, Aishwaryam of Kerala architecture. Sukhadarsham, good for the feast for the eyes. And Ramya, this is why I make Kerala architecture very special. Ramya is a feeling of contentment. This is why I'm branding Kerala architecture, soulful expressions. Ramya is a feeling of contentment. Ramya is a feeling of peace. The world over, we are talking about architecture for happiness and contentment and peace. This is what Kerala architecture is all about. I think I'm going behind, I don't know. And let me very quickly go through some of the pictures that will actually brand the traditional legacy of Kerala architecture. You look at the roof profile of Kerala architecture, this is basic architectural form. How did it emerge? It was merely not for elevation, this thing, that we got these kind of roofs. Tropical country, a lot of rainfall, sloping roofs. Look at the gable ends. These are not for beauty, let me tell you. These are basically for ventilation. The gable ends that you see across Kerala in the traditional roof, they are actually beautiful expressions of ventilation, ventilators. Can we design ventilators in such a way? Basic science says inside, when the air gets heated, it goes up. And that is why in all the Kerala houses you see air holes and ventilators. It will remain at the top. If you don't give holes, it won't go out. To facilitate cross ventilation, what do you need? You need probably some openings on the top of this thing. There, at the top of the apex of the roof, you can see this gable ends. And how does it get integrated in the basic architectural form is an exploration that you should do yourself. I mean, the material vocabulary, where else in the world Where else in the world? Because I'm working across the globe. I mean, doing buildings in Africa, buildings in other parts of Asia, other parts of Europe. Let me tell you that Kerala has let me tell you that with such conviction again. Where else can you find such a depository of beautiful, beautiful building materials? When you talk about architecture in the first year classes, you talk about lots of these things. You talk about texture, you talk about color, you talk about strength, durability. Those are the basic parameters for selecting a material. Where else in the world? Where else in the world can we get such beautiful materials like in Kerala? Our earth, I call it in Malayalam, Kanagarpyaya Manna. Where else in the world can we get such beautiful earth to build our buildings on? Our earth is the most beautiful buildable earth. We have the largest, let me tell you that, the biggest lime deposit in the world. Nobody knows about it. Lime deposit. And why are we touting about lime and cement are basically the same thing? I make a statement again for the engineers here, for the architects here. Lime and cement are basically, lime is a cementitious material. We used to do only lime materials till 1920s when cement came into power. Let me tell you, lime, most of the engineering applications, lime can replace. Our lakes, Vembanad Lake for instance, we have the richest buildable lime deposit in the world, 15 feet of lime deposit. Can we mainstream this material? This is one legacy that we have to look at. The spatial organization, I don't want to go at length, the spatial organization of traditional legacy is something again that needs to be explored, that needs to be taken care, and that needs to be touted across the world, flaunted across the world. Talking about such beautiful core linkages and connectivities in Kerala architecture. Talking about the rooms, talking about the picture that you see around. I mean, it's about a Pumukam. That was a place for interaction. This is the kind of relation, I mean, you don't find it elsewhere in the world. Such white Pumukam where we used to have social interaction, public interaction. We never had, I mean, old days, a formal living room. This was our living room. It was so open, close, transparent, and we were talking about people-centered architecture. I don't want to go at length, and I mean, these pictures are self-explanatory that way. And let me come to another phase of art. I was just talking about traditional this thing. Dr. Venu is here, who is the chief of Rebuild Kerala Mission. This is a picture. Kerala actually, one of the major challenges in housing inputs Kerala is facing is, are we building disaster resilient building? It's a very critical question for the architects and engineers in this thing, because now the times have come when the design will have to be disaster resilient, disaster resistant. And we have to look at a lot of critical issues, like land, for instance. This is a critical thing that Kerala floods have really brought out. Kerala has got very distinct land profiles. We have midlands, we have highlands, and we have a very long coastal line. Did our architect, the present day architect, is it really responding to the dictates of the land? It's a question that I will leave unanswered. But unless and until we take care of the land profile, it's going to be a disaster for us. Wherever disasters have happened, it is not the floods that actually affected people like me, social activists like me. It was not the floods, but it was the landslide. It is soil piping. These two phenomena actually virtually wrecked people like us, looking at the intensity of landslides and things like that. Why did it happen? Misuse, abuse, violations, no planning norms, and the rest of it. Unless we look at land in a very critical way and talk about innovation, how do we innovate on land use? It's a very interesting thing. It was the father of organic architecture, Frank Lloyd Wright, who said the building should be it should not be on a mountain, it should be off a mountain. That's what we call as organic architecture. Frank Lloyd Wright said building should be off a mountain, not on a mountain. The highlands are being flattened out to make buildings. The lowlands are being filled up to make buildings. And we architects, our engineers, are primarily, that is why I call ourselves, I should put my head down in shame, because we are responsible for the built-up heritage. We are responsible for the built-up environment. As it is, we have to be primarily responsible for the climate change in this country. And climate change is happening basically because the land is not being treated sensitively. Look at the old architecture. This is where I wanted to look at the legacy of architecture. Kerala always had the legacy of confining to organic architecture. The present day architecture, are we really responding to that? We have to respond to that. Disasters are great opportunities to learn. Disasters bring in a great opportunity to learn. Unless we learn from that, it's going to be disaster again. And how do we talk about innovations in architecture? One of the major things that we need to do, that we need to learn, is to have one, disaster resilient buildings, disaster resilient architecture. But the other thing, most important thing, is sustainability. You have to converge these two concepts together. Sustainability cannot be compromised. I'm telling you. The times are so. Sustainability cannot be compromised. How do we synchronize sustainability with disaster resilience? It's a primary subject that when you talk about innovations, primary subject that we should know. And let me tell you, some of the materials that I use, for instance, earth or lime or bamboo, there's always a question that are they disaster resistant? I will say with such conviction and determination that mud, basic earth, it can be made disaster resilient. This is one picture of the building, which is actually taken after the floods. On the other side, you can see the building underwater. Half it is underwater. How floods actually came to this building. It's a mud building. The roof is mud. It's not only even the roof is mud. The entire roof is mud. No cement, no steel. The roof is mud. And such a building where waters came in and occupied half of it, it has withstood the threat of this thing. So this is the challenge. Architects and engineers should find out answers using appropriate material, appropriate technology, always using the sustainability template. Can we innovate? Can we innovate? Don't you think these are beautiful, soulful expressions of architecture? I think so. I've been looking at very beautiful this thing of architecture. Now, we went into floods, we went into a lot of these things. And what is the way out? I mean, even in disaster times, can we have prototypes like that on some kind of concrete frame that can resist the floods and the landslide? On that, if we raise it up, can we build buildings like that? The only thing that we need, I mean, all the time, in the name of low-cost housing, in the name of cost-efficient housing, a lot of monotonous buildings that, I mean, are coming up. A lot of monotonous buildings. You look at the tribals, you look at the poor people of any state. When you talk about cost-effective housing, you talk about a box. It doesn't have poor people, the marginalized people. They are also entitled for beautiful buildings and beautiful architecture. I mean, disaster makes actually this thing more relevant. If we can actually do some prototypes, do some mass housing buildings, using the basic disaster resilience, but making it sustainable, that is the contribution that Kerala can show to the world. Elsewhere, when you are going for concrete monstrosities, using our own materials, using our own local capacities, locally available materials, can we frame something as beautiful, as cost-effective, as energy efficient, as eco-sensitive? This is the contribution that people are expecting for Kerala architecture. What are the things? I mean, when disaster comes, when housing shortage, this is the template with which we work. Kerala floods, for instance, have brought up very critical issues of what we have been talking over the last few decades, a house that grows. I mean, we don't have the money to build the whole thing. Can we limit it to the concept of house that grows? Have the basic, you have to distinguish between your needs and your, dreams. If you can definitely draw a line where you can talk about the basic needs. And can we have the expansion later? It's a critical question that we are raising through this campaign. This is what we call as a habitat literacy. Everything has to be eco-sensitive, energy efficient, cost-effective, and most important, people-centric. When you talk about innovation, to whom are you going to build? They should accept it. I'm telling you, they have a mandate for beautiful building. And if it gets to that people-centric approaches, then I'm telling you, architects, just mind you, you're not going to build in urban spaces anymore. People like me are going. But youngsters out there, let me tell you that. You are going to work in a very exciting domain of transitions, It's not urban space, it's not rural space, the space in between. That is where you're going to build. And transition architecture has got lots of opportunities for you. The poor people who don't have architect services, they build it with anything, straw, cardboard, paper sheets. They build very beautiful dwellings, very functional, very functional. You look at it, and unless your things are people-centric, and unless we talk about local solutions, how do you integrate the sustainability concept? When you talk about a house, it should talk about water harvesting, water management, waste management, harnessing solar. There's no other way, because we are running out of options. A house cannot be called a house. A habitat cannot be called a habitat unless it addresses the sustainability concept. And what are the possible ways out? This is one proposal that I was given for Puttumala. It looks so beautiful, no? Puttumala with all the trees and things like that. This obviously going to be located in a different place. But can we have a beautiful, this thing with all the basic infrastructure, this thing, accessible roads, play areas for the children, community space and things like that. And these are our dreams. And some prototypes, I mean, this is the prototype, first prototype that came up in the world after 2014 tsunami. Tsunami hit on December 26th. We completed the first prototype of this disaster, tsunami-resistant house, as early as February 17, and it was inaugurated by the opposition leader. The first prototype that came after a tsunami in the world. I mean, and this became a rallying point, defense point for the rest of them. These are some of the prototypes that we are building. And using, see, how do we innovate on, materials? How do we showcase our materials? This is the building of the Director General of National Institute of Rural Development in Hyderabad, completely built using, and this was actually given the best green building award in the country. And I mean, when you talk about cost-effective, energy efficient, this thing, are these the images that come forward? This is what the sheer strength of, sheer power of innovation, my dear friend. This is sheer power of innovation. Can we build? I mean, mud, when you look at it, it's a stupid material. Some people may not like it. But if we can make soulful expressions using these kind of material and kind of buildings that Kerala should be proud of, then we are going to... Before I conclude, let me also pay tribute to the legendary architect, Laurie Baker, who actually, for the first time, to people like us, who showed the material vocabulary and the architectural vocabulary can converge into a soulful expression of architecture. Look at this fenestration, look at the powerful ways of using local materials and giving it a face of, I mean, these faces are acknowledged elsewhere, and this is where we got some recognition, this thing there. And Kerala, let me come to the conclusions. Kerala, why are we touting as a design hub? Design hub because we have this thing. Let me say it with such pride and pleasure. My own alma mater, Trivandrum Engineering College, from where I graduated in architecture. Trivandrum Engineering College, in the last grading, stood first in the academic activities in the world, in the country. I mean, surpassing the likes of IITs, IIT Kharagpur, IIT Roorkee, where architecture is being taught, and all the SPAs across the country, SPA Delhi, SPA Bhopal, academic contents, academic activity, Trivandrum Engineering College stood first. So we are actually having beautiful, best of academic facilities. We don't have the basic, probably we lack some facilities, we lack the exposure, but we are number one. I tell the people across the world that Kerala is going to the emerging phase of architecture because the students of architecture who are studying now, youngsters, I'm telling you, you look at any national award, any list of national awards in the country, wherever it goes, Kerala, young architects from Kerala, especially from Kochi and Malabar side, they are listing in almost all the awards, this thing. They are topping the list now. Youngsters, 25-year, 30-year-old youngsters from Kerala, they are topping the list now. Wherever you go, residential building, commercial interiors, Kerala is going to lead the way. Kerala is going to be the answer. This way it's such this thing that Kerala is going to be, we have most creative people, with the most beautiful climate. This is the most beautiful domain that we have. Laurie Baker got recognized across the world because we were willing to experiment. We gave a space for creativity. When I try something in Andhra Pradesh or Chhattisgarh, I didn't get accepted. Kerala people have the creativity and the mind and the mental domain to accept such experiments in architecture. If I build a completely mud house, complete house, even roof made of mud, they don't ask me questions about the durability and life of the building. They accept it because they want their building to look different, to feel different. And the experiential coefficient is going to be completely this thing. And this is why we tout Kerala as a future design destination, especially in the architectural domain. Before I conclude, let me also tell you, Sunil was sharing a dream with us. A few of us were Asset Foundation, we're talking about conducting an international architectural festival to showcase the emerging trend of making Kerala as a destination, international. We are not talking about state boundaries, we are not talking about national boundaries, we are actually talking about international festival, probably surpassing the Biennale at Venice. Venice have a architectural Biennale. We are talking about a festival that will not only showcase Kerala's legacy in architecture, we want to cross the boundaries and you look at the experiential coefficient of architecture, design per se. And we have the resources, we have the academic institutions, we have the mind. With this mindscape and landscape converged together, I'm sure we will be able to do wonders. We'll be able to make Kerala as a destination for creative, sustainable, morally correct architecture. Before I conclude, let me also invite you to a small installation. People here, there's an installation that has come up near Revipuram. It's a part of Cochin Design Week. 96 square feet is the name of the installation. In 96 square feet, can we have a small family to look at? This is some of the pictures of this thing. It's an installation that is happening in Revipuram. Students of architecture, the creative young bunch of architects and engineers. Let me invite you to this place. 96 square feet. Can we have a habitat? This is the challenge probably. The world is facing. We are talking about lack of space, lack of facilities. Can we have, where we have a kitchen, we have a toilet, we have bed space, we have dining space, we have living space, we have everything, microwave, place for the fridge and the rest of it. Can we look at such small? As Schumacher said, small is always beautiful. Thank you. Thank you very much for your kind attention.